Hello people, this is Tony and I've been teaching Italian for the past 10 years. But before teaching, I was a student myself. And during my time as a student, I managed to learn 4 different languages on top of my native language, which is Italian. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you the best absolute way to learn Italian based on a teacher's perspective, but also on a student perspective who learned 4 different languages. I'm gonna split the video in 2 parts: method of studying and actual things needed, such as books, classes, apps to learn Italian. Let's start with the first part: how to set up a proper study plan. The first thing you need to be able to understand is how much time and money you have at your disposal, are available, or you're able to invest. The reason why this is very important to know is because the number 1 factor to learn a language is to be consistent in your study. And consistency only comes when you're realistic about how much time and money you can invest into your study. Now, money is not necessarily. It helps you get there faster, for example, booking a trip to Italy and spending time in Italy, or having private classes instead of group classes or no classes at all. But in my example, I learned 4 languages as a broke student, so money did not play a factor at all in my studying. But this automatically means that the key to my success was all the time that I was investing in studying a new language. According to the Foreign Service Institute, the average time to reach fluency in Italian, which means B2, would be between 600 hours and 750 hours. This means that if you study 1 hour a day, it will take you 2 years. If you study 2 hours a day, it's gonna take you 1 year. If you study 4 hours every day, it's gonna take you between 6 and 8 months. And if you study 6 hours a day, it's gonna take you between 3 and 4 months. Although it must also be said that if you want to speak comfortably and hold real conversations, you can already do that around 300 hours of studying. So when it comes to the methods of studying, you have 2 ways to go about it. You know realistically how much time you have available every day, and you use this every day until you reach your goal. Or you tell yourself that you want to be fluent in Italian in 3 or 6 months, and according to your goal, you need to study X amount of hours every day, no matter what. Pick what works best for you, but either way, you need to stick to it and be consistent about it. Now, when it comes to the actual things that you need to do and the material that you need to have, this is my absolute recommendation. First and foremost, book Italian language classes. It doesn't have to be private classes, it can also be group classes, which is much cheaper. In person or online, doesn't really matter, just pick what you like the most and stick with it. The reason why Italian classes are so important is because of the people element and the feedback element. At the end of the day, you learn a language to speak and interact with other people. And if you're just studying on your own, you will miss and lack this interaction element that helps you build fluency and be comfortable speaking Italian. The feedback element is what you receive from your teacher from making mistakes. Because guys, I say it all the time, the best way to learn a language is to make mistakes and learn from it. But how can you learn from your mistakes if nobody tells you that you're mistaken? Now, if for whatever reasons you cannot afford or attend Italian classes, that's okay, but then you need to be extra sharps in the next steps. Now, let's say that you signed up or not to Italian classes. The next thing you need to have is Italian grammar books. Grammar is the absolute foundation of any language. There is no way you can learn to speak if you do not understand the logic behind what you're saying and what you're writing. Now, the key here is do not study grammar in isolation, but study grammar in context. So for example, learn articles, verbs, whatever, through examples, not just reading the theory. And after that, very important, get your hands dirty and do exercises in Italian. This is the book that I recommend, and it's called Learn Italian Fast, the Right Way. From beginner to intermediate in 3 months. Yeah, I wrote that book, but I do not recommend it just because I wrote it. To be honest, the money I get from selling that book is peanuts. I can barely buy myself an espresso. It is the best book because I wrote it following the best method out there to learn the Italian grammar. And that is reading the theory, seeing the exercises, and getting your hands dirty with examples. But it is as much as important knowing when if and why you made a mistake. And this is why in my book, not only I've wrote the solutions, but also the explanations to the solutions, so that you understand why something went wrong. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Understanding the why things are the way they are, it's the number one key to learn a language. Because memorizing without understanding just doesn't work. Now that you've got yourself a grammar book, you need a book to read and write in Italian. And here I recommend book with short stories in Italian for beginners. But the nice thing about this book is that it is split into sections. And each section covers a very important topic in the Italian language. For example, section 1 is going to be about family and habits. Section 8 is going to be about work, job, gym, fitness. So that while you read, you also learn the vocabulary specific to certain topic. Now, the other nice thing about this book is that each short story is followed by pronunciation tips, few grammar explanations, and a vocabulary section related to the story. And after reading and understanding what you read, there are questions that you have to be able to answer writing in Italian. The key word here is writing. This is very, very important because writing in Italian will help you put together all the different words that you just learned, and this will help you in the future speaking in Italian. So do not shy away from writing in Italian. And as much as important, when you're reading the stories in Italian, read them out loud. That's because when you speak, not only you need to know the vocabulary, but you also have to have the muscle memory of how certain words are pronounced. And to train that, you just need to speak out loud while you read. Now that you have a grammar book to understand the why things are the way they are, and that you have a storybook to help you build your vocabulary, it's time for the next step. And that is language learning apps. The language learning app can be divided into two main categories. Fun to use, but not very useful, Duolingo, and not so fun to use, but a bit more useful, such as Babbel. Now, if you already have a grammar book, a storybook, and you are already going to Italian classes, then you should focus on the easy and fun to use app. Because an app should be seen as a complementary way to learn a language, not the only way. But if you have none of the things that I mentioned so far and you want your app to be the only way for you to learn Italian, then focus on an app such as Babbel, which brings more grammar, more structure, more boring things into the topic, but it gives you a better understanding of the Italian language. Although, as I said, an app is a complementary way to learn a language, not the only way to learn it. When I was starting to learn a new language, I tried all of these apps. And the one I found myself to keep using the most was Duolingo. The main reason was because it's easy to use, it's fun to use, and you can just use it, when you're at the toilet or commuting to school. All the other apps require more time and more preparation. For example, when I was using Babbel, I had to sit at a table, take a book, a pen, take notes, and remember the things that the app was teaching me. And everything is great, but I was already going to language classes, I already had a grammar book, so doing all of this in an app was just redundant and not very time-friendly. So once again, pick your evil, but stick to it. Now, when it comes to training your listening, there are plenty of resources out there. Italian radio, music in Italian, podcast in Italian, Netflix with subtitles in Italian, and there's plenty more. I recommend starting with watching Italian cartoons for kids. Alternatively, you can also watch any other cartoon that you were watching as a kid in your native language, but now watch it in Italian. This will help you a lot because you already know the cartoon, the series of the movie, and now that you can hear it in Italian, you can associate words to the meaning. Pick a cartoon, a series, a movie that it's easier and you're comfortable with. Now, the last thing that I want to cover in this video is how to improve your speaking and conversations ability. If you are already going to Italian classes, you should be kinda good to go. But if you're not going to Italian class, you should find yourself Italian friends or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever you like. And if not, you can always download those language exchange apps that connect you with native speakers. For example, Tandem, HelloTalk, Speaky, Italki, Linkbe, Conversation Exchange, and there's many more. I know that Tandem is for free and Italki you have to pay for it. But I've never used any of those apps because I had friends in real life and I was going to classes, so these apps were not useful for me. Now, to summarize and put everything back together, first build a method. Then pick your material, and finally stick to it. You can also go check my social media channels because I post daily content in Italian about grammar, speaking tips, speaking practices, most useful expressions, and so on. And all of that is free. I also have many videos in my YouTube channel in which I explain several grammar topics, so feel free to check them out. If you have any other doubt, question, concern, or want to know an opinion based on how you're studying, write it in the comments so I can reply to you. But for now, guys, enjoy learning Italian and good luck. Mwah!